Get out, you useless old man, you are ruining my aesthetic. My 16-year-old granddaughter Tiffany screamed this into her phone camera while 200 guests watched in silence. A second later, I felt the cold, sticky wetness of premium grape juice soaking into my chest. I stood there dripping purple liquid onto the marble floor, while my son looked away and my daughter-in-law hissed at me to leave. They thought I was just a broke, senile old man they kept around for charity. They had no idea that the mansion they were standing in, the cars they drove, and the credit cards they were swiping were all legally mine. They laughed at me that night, but they did not know that by sunrise the next morning, the locks would be changed, and their perfect world would be burned to the ground. Before I tell you how I taught my ungrateful family the hardest lesson of their lives, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps share these stories. And tell me in the comments where you are watching from right now. I love reading about where you all are from. My name is Bernard Caldwell, but most people used to call me Bernie back when I was reshaping the industrial skyline of New York. I am 70 years old now, and if you saw me on the street today, you would probably look right past me. I drive a 10-year-old sedan. I wear clothes that have been out of fashion since the 90s, and I live in a small one-bedroom apartment in Queens. By choice. I have spent the last 5 years living a quiet, simple life, testing the people around me to see who valued Bernard the man and who only cared about Bernard the billionaire. Unfortunately, the results of that test were about to break my heart. It was a Saturday evening in late August. The humidity in the Hamptons was thick enough to chew on, but inside the sprawling white estate on Dune Road, the air conditioning was blasting. It was Tiffany's Sweet 16 party. My son Preston and his wife Monica had spared no expense. Or rather, they had spared no expense of the generous allowance I secretly funneled into their accounts every month. There were ice sculptures. There was a DJ flown in from Miami. There was a chocolate fountain the size of a small car. And there was me standing in the far corner by a potted palm tree trying to make myself as small as possible. I was wearing my lucky suit. It was a cream-colored linen suit I had bought in 1985, the day I closed my first major warehouse deal. It was a bit frayed at the cuffs now, and the style was wide in the lapels, but I loved it. It reminded me of a time when hard work meant something, to the crowd of teenagers and social climbers in the room. However, I looked like a relic. I looked like the help. I held a glass of lukewarm tap water watching the spectacle. Tiffany was the center of attention, dressed in a gown that probably cost more than my first house. She was holding her phone up on a selfie stick, live streaming to her followers. I watched her move through the crowd, demanding compliments, fishing for envy. She was not the sweet little girl I used to read bedtime stories to. She had become a carbon copy of her mother Monica. Vain, loud, and cruel. I saw her walking backward toward my corner, talking loudly to her phone screen. "Hey guys, look at this loser setup over here," she said, laughing at the decoration on a nearby table. She did not see me. Or maybe she did, and she just did not care. She took a step back and collided hard with my shoulder. I tried to catch her, but her other hand was holding a large crystal goblet of dark purple grape juice. It went everywhere. The cold liquid splashed across the front of my cream linen suit. It soaked instantly into the fabric, spreading like a dark bruise across my chest and stomach. It splashed onto my chin. It dripped down to my shoes. The music seemed to stop. The chatter died down. For a second, I thought she would apologize. I thought she would say, "Grandpa, I am so sorry. Let me get you a towel." Instead, she looked at the stain on my chest, then looked at her phone screen, and her face twisted into a mask of pure disgust. "Oh my God," she shrieked. "You ruined my shot. Look at this." She turned the camera toward me, shoving the lens into my face. "This disgusting old man just ruined my live stream. Get away from me." "Tiffany," I started to say, reaching out a hand to steady myself. "Don't touch me," she yelled, jumping back as if I were contagious. "You are dirty. Look at you. You look like a homeless person who wandered in off the street. Why are you even here? Nobody wants you here." I froze. My hand dropped to my side. The juice was seeping through my shirt, now cold against my skin. I looked around the room. Dozens of teenagers were holding up their phones recording. Adults were whispering behind their hands. I looked for my son. Preston was standing near the bar, talking to a group of investors he was trying to impress. He was wearing a tuxedo I had paid for. He was drinking scotch I had paid for. He looked right at me. Our eyes met. I saw the moment he made a choice. He saw his father, humiliated, dripping wet, standing alone. He could have walked over. He could have put an arm around me. He could have told his daughter to apologize. Instead, he checked his Rolex, adjusted his cufflinks, and turned his back to me, continuing his conversation as if I did not exist. That hurt more than the insults. That was the knife in the heart. Then Monica appeared. My daughter-in-law pushed through the crowd, her heels clicking aggressively on the marble. She did not look at my ruined suit. She did not ask if I was okay. She glared at me with eyes full of venom. "Dad!" She hissed, her voice low and sharp like a razor. "What are you doing out here? I told you to stay in the servants' quarters until the party was over." "I was thirsty, Monica," I said, my voice calm but quiet. "I just came out for a glass of water." "Well, now look what you have done," she said, gesturing at Tiffany, who was fake crying for her camera. "You have upset Tiffany on her special day. You are an embarrassment, Bernie. Look at this suit. It smells like mothballs. You look like the gardener. Actually, the gardener dresses better than you." I looked at her. I looked at the granite countertops I had paid for, the crystal chandelier I had selected. This house was not theirs. It belonged to the Caldwell Family Trust. I had let them live here to see if they could handle the responsibility of wealth. I had let Preston act as the manager to see if he had the character to lead. Clearly, I had my answer. "Go clean yourself up," Monica snapped, pointing toward the back exit, the one used by the catering staff. "And then stay in your room. If you can behave like a civilized human being, then you should not be seen. Just disappear, Bernie. Just disappear." Tiffany laughed. "Yeah, Grandpa, go back to your hole. You are ruining my aesthetic." The guests chuckled nervously, relieving the tension by siding with the bullies. It is a human instinct, I suppose. Nobody wants to stand with the victim. I felt a strange calmness wash over me. It was the same cold clarity I used to feel in the boardroom, right before I executed a hostile takeover. The sadness evaporated. The hope that they would change evaporated. All that was left was the cold, hard math of the situation. They wanted me to disappear. They wanted the old man gone so they could enjoy the money without the burden of the man who earned it. I did not argue. I did not raise my voice. I did not demand an apology. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a damp handkerchief. I dabbed at the stain on my lapel, but I did not try to clean it off. I wanted to keep it. I wanted to remember this moment. This purple stain was not a mark of shame. It was a receipt. It was proof of purchase for the lesson I was about to teach them. I placed my glass of water gently on a passing waiter's tray. "I am sorry to have disturbed you," I said to Monica. My voice was steady. "It will not happen again." "Good," she said, turning away to comfort Tiffany. "Finally." I walked toward the front door, not the back exit. I walked past Preston, who was laughing loudly at a joke he probably did not understand. I walked past the security guards who looked at me with pity. I stepped out into the humid Hamptons night. The ocean breeze hit my face. I stood on the driveway of the estate I owned, looking back at the lights and the music. I pulled my old flip phone from my pocket. I did not call an Uber yet. I dialed a number I had not used in a long time. It was 2 a.m, but I knew he would answer. Jonathan Eves, my personal attorney and oldest friend, picked up on the second ring. "Bernie, is everything all right?" Jonathan asked, his voice thick with sleep. "You never call this late." I looked down at my stained suit. I looked at the house where my family was celebrating my absence. "Wake up, Jonathan," I said. "We have work to do." I want you to initiate the Omega Protocol." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Jonathan knew what that meant. We had drafted that clause 10 years ago as a nuclear option, a safeguard. I never thought I would have to use. "Bernie, are you sure?" Jonathan asked, his voice losing all traces of sleep. "If we do this, there is no going back. It will scorch the earth. They will lose the house, the cards, the access, everything. By noon tomorrow, they will be destitute." I watched through the window as Tiffany took another selfie, making a peace sign while standing next to her father. They looked so happy, so secure, so arrogant. "I am sure," I said. "Execute it immediately. I want the eviction notice ready for breakfast." I hung up the phone and turned my back on the mansion. I began the long walk down the driveway to the main road to catch a cab back to my small apartment in Queens. The grape juice was sticky and uncomfortable on my chest, but as I walked, I felt lighter than I had in years. They told me nobody wanted me there. Well, tomorrow they would find out that without me, there was no there to be at. The party was over. The Uber ride back to Queens took nearly 2 hours. The driver, a young man with tired eyes, kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror. He probably wondered why a man in a grape juice-stained suit was leaving a multi-million-dollar estate in the Hamptons to go to a crumbling brick building in a working-class neighborhood. I did not explain. I just watched the highway lights blur past, feeling the sticky sugar drying on my chest. It felt heavy, like a layer of concrete hardening over my heart. When we finally pulled up to my building, it was past 3 in the morning. I tipped the driver $50 cash. He looked at the bill, then at me with genuine surprise. It was the first honest reaction I had seen all night. I walked up the 3 flights of stairs because the elevator had been broken since Tuesday. The hallway smelled of boiled cabbage and old cigarettes. This was my reality for the last 5 years. A 400-square-foot apartment with a radiator that hissed like an angry snake and a view of a brick wall. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The silence was absolute. There were no servants here, no crystal chandeliers, just a worn beige sofa, a small television, and shelves filled with books about history and economics. I took off the ruined jacket and hung it on the back of a kitchen chair. I stared at the purple stain. It looked like a map of a country that had just been bombed. I went to the sink to splash cold water on my face. The water pipes groaned. As I dried my face with a rough towel, my phone began to buzz on the counter. It vibrated aggressively against the cheap laminate surface. My heart actually skipped a beat. For a split second, the foolish father in me rose to the surface. It was Preston, my son. A part of me thought maybe he had left the party. Maybe he was calling to apologize. Maybe he was calling to say, "Dad, I am so sorry. I should have defended you. I should have walked out with you." I picked up the phone. "Hello, son," I said, my voice raspy. "Dad, are you home yet?" His voice was not apologetic. It was tight, annoyed. It was the voice of a man who was inconvenienced, not a man who was ashamed. "Yes, Preston, I just walked in." "Good. Look, we need to talk. Monica is absolutely furious. She has been crying in the bathroom for an hour. Do you have any idea how embarrassed she is?" "The mayor was there, Dad." "The mayor? And you looked like a vagrant who wandered in from the bus station." I closed my eyes. He was worried about the mayor. He was worried about Monica's tears, not about the fact that his daughter had publicly humiliated his father. "I am sorry to hear she is upset," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Upset is an understatement." Preston sighed loudly. "She is reconsidering everything, Dad. She says she does not know if she can trust you around the family anymore. She says you are becoming unstable, that the way you acted tonight, just standing there, staring at people, it was creepy. She thinks you are losing your grip on reality." I almost laughed. I was losing my grip, I was the one who built a dynasty from nothing, while he was the one who could not even change a tire without calling roadside assistance. "What do you want me to do, Preston?" I asked, leaning against the counter. "Well, we have been talking, Monica and I, and we think it is time to make some changes for your own protection." My protection. The words hung in the air like smoke. What kind of changes? Preston cleared his throat. It was a nervous tic he had since he was a child, whenever he was about to lie. "Look, Dad, you are 70. You are living in that awful apartment in Queens. You are wearing old clothes. It is clear you are struggling to manage things. We are worried that you might be vulnerable to scammers or just making bad decisions. Keeping control of the trust fund is too much stress for you at your age." I gripped the phone tighter. The trust fund. The Caldwell Family Trust. That was the key. That was the engine. Preston did not know the full extent of it, but he knew enough. The trust held the title to the Hamptons' house they were sleeping in. It held the title to the penthouse in Manhattan they used for weekends. It held the controlling shares of the company where Preston played the role of CEO. It held $50 million in liquid assets. It was the only thing standing between them and total destitution, and it was the only thing I still controlled absolutely. So I said slowly, "You want me to do what exactly?" "We want you to come to the lawyer's office tomorrow morning," Preston said, his voice rushing now, trying to get the words out before he lost his nerve. "Just to sign some paperwork. Nothing major. Just transferring the trusteeship to me. It would give me power of attorney over the assets. That way Monica and I can handle the headaches. We can pay your bills, manage the properties, and make sure you are taken care of. You would not have to worry about anything. We could even move you into a nice assisted living facility. One of the top-tier ones." Monica found a brochure. "It is very clean, Dad. Very safe." There it was. The coup de grace. They did not just want me gone from the party. They wanted me gone from society. They wanted to put me in a home, take the checkbook, and erase me while they spent my life as work on handbags and parties. They thought I was a senile old man clinging to pennies. They had no idea I checked the global markets every morning at 5 and reviewed the Trust's performance every Friday night. "Dad, are you there?" Preston asked when I did not answer immediately. I looked at the grape juice stain on my jacket. I looked at the peeling paint on my walls. I thought about the Omega protocol I had initiated just an hour ago with Jonathan. If I refused now, if I fought him on the phone, he would get suspicious. He might try to move money before the freeze went into effect. He might try to hide assets. I needed him calm. I needed him arrogant. I needed him to think he had won. "I am here, son," I said, making my voice sound tired and weak. I am tired, Preston. Maybe you are right. Maybe I am getting too old for all this." "You think so?" Preston's voice brightened instantly. The relief was palpable. "Yes," I said. "I do not want to fight anymore. I do not want to upset Monica. If signing the papers will make peace in the family, then I will do it. That is great, Dad, really. It is the right decision. You are doing the right thing. Monica will be so relieved." "I am sure she will be," I said. "Okay, so meet us at the firm's legal office tomorrow at 9. We will have everything ready. You just need to bring your ID and sign. I will be there, I promised." "Great. Get some sleep, Dad. We will see you in the morning." He hung up without saying I love you. He hung up like he had just closed a business deal. I put the phone down and walked over to the window. Below me, the streetlights of Queens flickered. A siren wailed in the distance. Preston thought he was getting the keys to the kingdom tomorrow. He thought he was going to walk into that office and strip his father of everything. He thought he was smart. He forgot who taught him how to read a contract. He forgot that I was the one who wrote the bylaws of the trust. The trust was a revocable living trust. That meant as long as I was breathing, I could change it, revoke it, or dissolve it at any moment. And giving Preston trusteeship would only work if the trust still held assets. But by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, the trust would be empty. The Omega Protocol was not just a freeze. It was a liquidation and transfer event. Jonathan was already working. By the time the sun came up, the Hamptons' house would be transferred to a holding company owned by a charity. The company's shares would be placed in a blind trust. The cash would be moved to secure accounts in Switzerland that Preston could not touch with a 10-foot pole. When Preston put that pen to paper tomorrow, he would be signing over control of a ghost. He would be becoming the captain of a ship that had already sunk. I walked back to the kitchen chair and touched the stain on my suit one last time. It was dry now, stiff and crusty. "You wanted the power, son," I whispered to the empty room. "You wanted the control. Well, tomorrow you're going to get exactly what you asked for. You are going to be responsible for everything. The debts, the mortgages, the lifestyle." I went to my small bedroom and pulled out a fresh suit for the morning. Not the old linen one. I reached into the back of the closet and pulled out a garment bag I had not opened in years. Inside was a charcoal gray bespoke suit from Savile Row. Silk lining. Perfect cut. If I was going to end their world tomorrow, I was going to dress the part. I lay down on my lumpy mattress, but I did not sleep. I stared at the ceiling, counting the hours until sunrise. The sadness was gone now, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. They wanted to take my stick, my support, my dignity. They wanted to leave me with nothing. Tomorrow they would learn that I never needed the stick. I was the one holding them up, and I was about to let go. I was not physically present at the Hamptons estate when the clock struck 8 that morning, but through the detailed report Jonathan gave me later, I could see it as clearly as if I were watching a movie. The morning sun was beating down on the white gravel driveway, where luxury cars were parked haphazardly, the remnants of last night's excess. Inside the house, the air was likely stale with the smell of spilled champagne and expensive perfume. My son Preston and his wife Monica were sleeping soundly in the master bedroom, buried under Egyptian cotton sheets I had paid for dreaming of the power they believed they would inherit in just 1 hour. They were probably dreaming of the meeting at 9 o'clock where they thought I would sign away my dignity. They were late, of course. They were always late. They assumed the world would wait for them because it always had. But today the world was not waiting. Today the world was knocking at the door with a battering ram. It started with the crunch of tires on gravel. Not the polite purr of a limousine, but the heavy, authoritative rumble of police interceptors. 2 Suffolk County Sheriff vehicles pulled up to the front steps, followed closely by a black town car. Jonathan stepped out, flanked by 4 uniformed officers and a team of professional movers who looked like they could lift a piano with one hand. The sheriff did not ring the doorbell. He pounded on the solid oak door with a heavy fist. The sound echoed through the silent house like a gunshot. Boom, boom, boom! It took 3 minutes for someone to answer. I imagined the confusion inside. The groggy cursing. The stumbling around for silk robes. Finally, the door swung open. It was Monica. She was wearing a silk kimono and a sleep mask pushed up on her forehead, her face puffy from sleep and irritation. "Who is it?" she snapped, not even opening her eyes fully. "Do you have any idea what time it is? We are recovering from a very important event. Deliveries go to the back." "Mrs. Caldwell." "This is not a delivery," Jonathan said, his voice cutting through the morning air like a knife. Monica blinked her eyes, adjusting to the sunlight. She saw the uniforms. She saw the badges. She saw the movers standing ready with empty boxes. Her arrogance faltered for a second, replaced by confusion. "Jonathan, what are you doing here with the police? Is this about Bernie? Did the old man have a heart attack or something?" She sounded hopeful. "That is the part that chills me even now." She sounded hopeful that I might be dead. Mr. Caldwell is in excellent health, Jonathan replied, stepping forward. He has, however, been very busy this morning. I am here to serve you with an emergency order of eviction and repossession. Eviction. Monica laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. That is ridiculous. This is our house. The Preston owns this house, or he will in about an hour when his father signs the papers. Now get off my porch before I call the police. I am the police, Ma. And the sheriff stepped in, his hand resting on his belt. And according to the deed and the trust documents filed at the county clerk's office at 8 a.m. this morning, this property belongs solely to the Caldwell Family Trust. The trustee, Mr. Bernard Caldwell, has revoked your right of occupancy effective immediately. You are trespassing. Trespassing, Monica shrieked, the word tearing from her throat. Preston. Preston, get down here. Preston appeared at the top of the sweeping staircase wearing nothing but boxer shorts and a look of absolute bewilderment. What is going on, Monica? Who are these people? They are kicking us out, Monica screamed, running to him. Jonathan is here. He says your father kicked us out. Preston looked down at Jonathan. His face went pale. Jonathan, this is a mistake. We have a meeting at 9. Dad is signing the transfer. Your father has already signed the necessary paperwork, Preston. Jonathan called up to him. He signed the revocation of the trust. He signed the removal of you as a beneficiary. And he signed this eviction order. You have exactly 1 hour to remove your personal effects from the premises. Anything left after 60 minutes will be considered abandoned property and disposed of. This is illegal, Preston shouted, gripping the banister. You cannot do this. I live here. I have rights. You are a guest, Preston. Jonathan corrected him calmly. A guest who has overstayed his welcome. And frankly, considering the cross-default clauses that were triggered on your loans about 20 minutes ago, losing the roof over your head is about to be the least of your problems. Now I suggest you start packing. Officer, escort them. The sheriff motioned to his deputies. They marched up the stairs past a stunned Preston. The invasion had begun. The next hour was a symphony of chaos. The movers did not handle the items with the reverence Monica demanded. They moved with efficient, brutal speed. They were not packing the house. They were clearing it. Preston tried to call me. I know because my phone buzzed in my pocket as I walked toward my office in Manhattan. I did not answer. Then he tried to call his own lawyer. He tapped frantically on his smartphone, his fingers trembling. I can't get a signal, he yelled. Why can't I get a signal? Monica grabbed her phone. Mine is dead too. It says SOS only. Jonathan stood in the foyer checking his watch. That would be the corporate plan, he said without looking up. The company pays for those phones, correct? Since you were terminated from your position as CEO effective at 8:15 this morning, the company has suspended all perks, including telecommunications. I believe the severance package included 0 days of notice. Terminated, Preston whispered. He slumped against the wall, sliding down until he hit the floor. Terminated. But Monica was not done fighting. She ran to the bedroom, screaming for Tiffany. Tiffany, wake up! We have to save the jewelry. Get the bags. Get everything. Tiffany emerged from her room looking like a raccoon with smeared eyeliner. She saw the police and immediately did what her generation does. She held up her phone to record. This is harassment, she screamed at a deputy. I am live streaming this. You are going to be canceled. The deputy did not blink. Ma, and put the phone away and pack your clothes. Tiffany ignored him and ran to her closet. This closet was her temple. It was filled with limited edition handbags, designer shoes, and clothes that cost more than a college tuition. She started grabbing armfuls of bags, throwing them into a pile. These are mine, she shrieked, clutching a Birkin bag that cost $40,000. You cannot touch these. Jonathan stepped into the room. He held a clipboard with an inventory list. Actually, Miss Caldwell, he said. Consulting the list, those items were purchased using the corporate American Express card assigned to your father for business expenses. According to the company bylaws, personal use of corporate funds is embezzlement. Therefore, these items are evidence and property of Caldwell Holdings. You cannot take them. No, Tiffany screamed, pulling the bag against her chest. Grandpa gave them to me. Your grandfather allowed your father to use the card, Jonathan corrected. A privilege that has been abused. Sheriff, please secure the corporate assets. The deputy stepped forward and gently but firmly took the bag from Tiffany's hands. She wailed a sound of pure, spoiled agony as if she had lost a limb. She tried to grab a pair of shoes. The deputy took those too. You can take your clothing, Jonathan said, pointing to the pile of everyday wear. Jeans, t-shirts, personal items bought with personal funds if you can prove it. Anything bought by the company stays. By 8:45, the family was standing in the driveway. They had 3 suitcases between them. Monica was wearing a tracksuit she had managed to find. Preston was in jeans and a wrinkled polo shirt. Tiffany was sobbing uncontrollably, sitting on a Louis Vuitton trunk that Jonathan informed her she could not keep. The movers were already locking the front doors. The sheriff placed a neon orange sticker on the wood. Evicted. This is insane, Monica hissed, pacing back and forth on the gravel. Where are we supposed to go? We have no car. Oh, that is right, Jonathan said, snapping his fingers. The Range Rover and the Porsche, both leased by the company. The tow trucks should be here any minute. As if on cue, 2 flatbed trucks rolled up the driveway. The drivers didn't even ask for keys. They just hooked up the luxury SUVs and dragged them onto the beds. Preston watched his Porsche Cayenne disappear with a look of hollow shock. He was a captain watching his ship sink, and he didn't even have a life raft. Here, Jonathan said, handing Preston a slip of paper. This is a list of local motels that accept cash. Since your credit cards have likely been frozen by now, I suggest you hurry. The rates go up on weekends. You are enjoying this, aren't you? Monica spat at him. You and that bitter old man. You are laughing at us. Jonathan stopped. His professional mask slipped for just a second. Bernie isn't laughing, Monica, he said, his voice low and dangerous. Bernie is heartbroken. He gave you everything. He gave you a life most people only dream of. And last night you treated him like garbage in front of the entire town. You broke his heart. Now he is breaking your bank account. It seems like a fair trade to me. He turned and walked back to his town car. Good luck, he said over his shoulder. You have 10 minutes to clear the property before I have you arrested for trespassing. Preston looked at his wife. He looked at his weeping daughter. He looked at the mansion that was no longer his. Call an Uber, he muttered, reaching for his pocket. I can't, Monica screamed, throwing her useless phone at him. The service is cut, you idiot. We have to walk. Walk, Tiffany gasped, looking at the long driveway. In these heels. Welcome to the real world, princess, Preston said, his voice cracking with the first hint of reality. They grabbed the handles of their suitcases. The wheels crunched loudly on the gravel as they began the long, humiliating trudge down the driveway toward the main road. The sun was fully up now, shining brightly on their shame. Neighbors were slowing down as they drove past, staring at the spectacle of the Caldwell family, walking like refugees in their own neighborhood. I was sitting in my office in Manhattan when Jonathan texted me. It is done. They are on foot. I closed my eyes and let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. The first domino had fallen. They were out of the house. They were cut off from communication. They were on the street. But this was just the beginning. The house was just shelter. The real pain, the real squeeze was about to happen when they tried to spend money they no longer had. I turned my chair to look out the window at the city skyline. Somewhere down there, my family was realizing that without my checkbook, They were just three people with expensive tastes and no skills. I opened the file on my desk. It contained the financial records of the company. The records Preston thought I never looked at. The records that showed the embezzlement, the fake expenses, the theft. Preston thought he had hit rock bottom walking down that driveway. He had no idea. He was still falling, and the ground was coming up fast. The journey from the estate to the sanctuary of the Ritz-Carlton was likely the longest 5 miles of my son's life. They did not walk the entire way, of course. Preston had exactly $40 in cash in his wallet, the last remnants of an allowance he hadn't realized was his final one. They took a local taxi that smelled of pine air freshener and stale tobacco, squeezing 3 people and 3 suitcases into the back of a sedate sedan that had seen better days. It was a far cry from the chauffeured black cars they were accustomed to, but desperation has a way of lowering standards very quickly. When the taxi dropped them off under the grand awning of the hotel, they tried to compose themselves. They smoothed their wrinkled clothes. Monica fixed her hair in the reflection of the glass doors. Tiffany wiped her eyes and put on her sunglasses even though they were indoors. They were about to perform the only trick they knew how to do, which was pretending to be important. I can imagine Preston striding through the revolving doors, his chest puffed out, trying to project an air of authority he no longer possessed. He walked straight to the reception desk, ignoring the line of tourists. To him, waiting was for other people. He slammed his hand on the marble counter to get the attention of the young woman behind the computer. "I need the presidential suite," he demanded, his voice loud enough to turn heads in the lobby. "And I need it for an indefinite period. We are having renovations done at the estate." The receptionist, a young woman named Sarah, whom I had hired years ago for a different property before she moved to hospitality, looked up. She did not recognize him, but she recognized the attitude. She smiled, that tight, professional smile people use when dealing with difficult children. "Do you have a reservation, sir?" she asked. "I do not need a reservation," Preston scoffed. "I am a Caldwell. Just give me the key." He reached into his wallet and pulled out the card. The American Express Centurion, the black card. It is made of titanium. It is heavy. When you drop it on a table, it makes a specific metallic clatter that sounds like money. It is the ultimate status symbol, the key that opens every door in the world. Or at least it was until about 2 hours ago. He threw the card onto the marble counter with a look of supreme confidence. "Keep the tab open," he said. "We will be ordering room service, and I need a personal shopper sent up immediately. My wife and daughter need new wardrobes." Sarah picked up the card. She felt the weight of the metal. She swiped it through the reader. I sat in my office miles away, watching the alerts roll in on my private dashboard. I saw the transaction attempt pop up in red. Declined. Pick up card. Code 04. Sarah frowned at her screen. She swiped it again. The same message flashed. A specialized instruction that appears only when an account is not just frozen, but flagged for immediate repossession by the issuer. "I am sorry, sir," she said, her voice dropping to a discreet whisper. "The card has been declined." Preston laughed. It was a loud barking sound. "That is impossible. It is a black card. It has no limit. Try it again. You probably swiped it wrong." "I have tried it twice, sir," Sarah said, her polite mask slipping just a fraction. "The system is giving me a specific code. It says the account has been closed by the primary account holder and the card is to be retained." "Retained?" Preston asked, the color draining from his face. "What do you mean, retained?" "It means I cannot give it back to you, sir. It is the property of the bank and I have instructions to confiscate it." She dropped the heavy titanium card into a slot in her drawer. The sound of it hitting the bottom of the box was the sound of Preston's identity dying. "Give me back my card!" Preston shouted, reaching over the counter. "That is theft. I am going to sue you. I am going to buy this hotel and fire you." "Security," the receptionist said into her headset. her eyes never leaving Preston's face. Monica shoved Preston aside. "You are useless," she hissed at him. She dug into her purse and pulled out her own wallet. It was a sleek leather piece I had bought her for Christmas 3 years ago. She pulled out a Visa Infinite card, a shiny piece of plastic that promised a credit limit of $500,000. "Use mine," she said, slamming it down, "and add a bottle of their most expensive champagne. We need to get the taste of this morning out of our mouths." Sarah took the card. She swiped it. I saw the second alert on my screen. Declined. Guarantor withdrawn. Immediate payment due. Sarah looked up again. "I'm afraid this card is also declined, ma'am." Monica's mouth fell open. "That is a lie. That is my personal card. It has nothing to do with him." "Actually, ma'am," Sarah said, reading the notes on her screen, "the system indicates is that the credit line was guaranteed by a third party, a Mr. Bernard Caldwell. That guarantee was withdrawn at 8:30 this morning. Without the guarantor, the bank has not only closed the account, but marked the entire outstanding balance as immediately due. You currently owe the bank $42,000, and until that is paid, the card is invalid." The lobby was quiet now. The tourists were staring. The business travelers had stopped typing on their laptops. Everyone was watching the wealthy family imploding in real time. "This is a mistake," Monica screeched. Her voice was climbing an octave with every word. "My father-in-law is senile. He does not know what he is doing. You have to let us check in. We have nowhere else to go. That is not my problem, ma." Sarah said, her voice icy. "And you are causing a disturbance." 2 large men in dark suits appeared behind Preston and Monica. They were not the polite doormen. They were hotel security, and they looked like they enjoyed their jobs. "Sir Ma," the taller one said, "we are going to have to ask you to leave." "You cannot kick us out," Preston sputtered. "Do you know who I am? I am the CEO of Caldwell Holdings." "Actually," the guard said, looking at a notification on his own phone, "news travels fast in this town. I believe the news just reported that Caldwell Holdings appointed an interim CEO this morning after the board removed the previous one for financial irregularities. You are trespassing on private property." Tiffany, who had been silent until now, let out a wail of pure despair. She looked at her parents, then at the guards, then at the people filming them with their phones. "Daddy, do something," she cried. "Everyone is looking at us." Preston looked at his daughter. He looked at his wife. He looked at the card reader that had just rejected his existence. For the first time, he realized that his name meant nothing without my money behind it. He tried one last desperate move. He grabbed the house phone on the reception desk. "I am calling the bank," he yelled. "I am calling the police. I am calling everyone." The guard reached out and put a finger on the receiver hook, disconnecting the line. "You can make your calls from the sidewalk, sir," the guard said. "Grab your bags." He did not wait for them to comply. He grabbed the handle of Monica's suitcase. His partner grabbed the other 2. They began marching toward the revolving doors. Preston and Monica had to run to keep up. They scrambled after their luggage, looking like panicked tourists who had missed a flight. "Hey, wait! Those are Louis Vuitton! Be careful!" Monica screamed, chasing the guard. They were herded through the lobby, past the staring eyes, past the whispers, past the judgment. They were pushed out through the revolving doors and onto the hot pavement of the city street. The guards deposited the bags on the curb and stood in front of the doors, arms crossed, a living wall of rejection. Preston stood there blinking in the sunlight. The humidity was rising. The traffic was loud. He reached for his pocket to call a car service and then remembered he had no phone. He reached for his wallet to buy a water and remembered he had no cards. He had $40 in cash. A wife who was hyperventilating. A daughter who was having a meltdown on the sidewalk. And absolutely no plan. I watched the GPS tracker on the company car they no longer had access to. It was sitting in the impound lot. I checked the bank logs. 0 balances. I checked the company email server. His access was revoked. They were stranded on a street corner in Manhattan, surrounded by millions of people, and they were completely alone. The realization must have hit them then. The cold, hard truth I had tried to protect them from for decades. Money is not just paper. Money is access. Money is a shield. And I had just taken away their shield. Monica turned to Preston, her face twisted in a mask of pure fury. "Fix this!" she screamed, hitting him on the chest with her fists. "Fix this right now, Preston! You said he was a senile old man. You said we had time. You said you were in control." "I thought I was." Preston whispered, his voice hollow. "I thought he was weak." "He is not weak," Monica spat. "He is a monster, and you are an idiot. What are we going to do? Where are we going to sleep?" Preston looked at the $40 in his wallet. He looked at the towering skyline of the city, a city he used to think he owned. "We have to go to the office," he said. "I need to get into the safe. I have cash in the office safe. Emergency cash." He did not know that I had already been to the office. He did not know that the safe was open and empty. He did not know that the only thing waiting for him at Caldwell Holdings was a security team with his picture on a banned list and a cardboard box with his personal items. But I let him have that hope for a few more minutes. I wanted him to run to the last place he felt powerful, only to find out he had been evicted from there too. I closed the laptop on my desk. I took a sip of water. It was cool and refreshing, unlike the warm grape juice that had started this war. Jonathan walked into my office. "The hotel just called," he said. "They are out. No incident other than a lot of screaming." "Good," I said. "Preston is heading here," Jonathan added, checking a message. "The lobby security just radioed. He is trying to get into the building." I stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the street 40 floors below. I could not see him, but I knew he was there, small and insignificant against the concrete. "Let him up," I said. Jonathan looked surprised. "Let him up." "But you said—" "I know what I said." "But he thinks he can get money from the safe." "I want to be the one to tell him the safe is empty. I want to see his face when he realizes the business is gone too." I adjusted my cuffs. "Bring him to the boardroom," I said. "I will meet him there. And Jonathan, have the police on standby. If he has done what I think he has done with the company accounts, we are going to need them sooner than we thought." I walked out of my office and headed down the hall. The final lesson was about to begin. Preston hit the revolving doors of the Caldwell Tower with the force of a battering ram. He was sweating profusely, the underarms of his polo shirt stained dark, and his hair was sticking up in wild tufts. He looked nothing like the chief executive officer who usually strode through this lobby in Italian loafers. He looked like a man running from a burning building. I watched him on the security feed from my office on the 40th floor. It was pathetic, really. He marched past the reception desk without stopping, barking orders at the air. "Call the CFO," he shouted, not even looking at the receptionist. "Get the board on the line. Emergency meeting in 10 minutes. My father has lost his mind, and I am taking control." The receptionist, a woman named Brenda, who had been with the company longer than Preston had been alive, did not pick up the phone. She just watched him go, her face completely impassive. The security guards standing by the elevators exchanged a look, but they did not stop him. They had their orders. Let the mouse run into the trap. Preston slammed his hand against the elevator button repeatedly, as if physical force would make the machine move faster. When the doors finally slid open, he threw himself inside. I could see him pacing in the small metal box, muttering to himself, rehearsing his speech. He was convincing himself that this was just a misunderstanding, a temporary glitch in the matrix of his charmed life. He convinced himself that he was still the boss, that he could fix this with a signature and a shout. When the elevator chimed on the executive floor, he stormed out. The office was quiet. The open-plan area where the analysts worked was silent. Everyone watching him with wide eyes. They knew. In a company like ours, rumors travel faster than light. They knew the sheriff had been at his house. They knew his credit cards were dead. They were watching a dead man walking, and he did not even know he was a ghost yet. Preston ignored them all. He ran straight to his corner office, the one with the view of the Hudson River, the one I had given him when I promoted him. He did not sit at his desk. He went straight to the large abstract painting on the wall. He pulled it aside, revealing a wall safe. This was his backup plan, his secret stash. He spun the dial, his fingers slipping on the metal because they were so sweaty. Left, right, left. He pulled the handle. The door swung open. I zoomed in the camera on his face. The look of absolute horror was worth every penny I had lost over the years. The safe was empty. Not just empty of cash. It was scrubbed clean. The emergency fund, the bearer bonds, the passports he kept there for quick getaways, all gone. Jonathan and I had cleared it out at 7:30 that morning, while Preston was still arguing with the sheriff in the Hamptons. No, Preston screamed. He clawed at the empty metal box as if the money might be hiding in the corners. No, no, no. He spun around, his eyes wild. He saw his executive assistant standing in the doorway holding a cardboard box. "Where is it?" Preston yelled at her. "Who touched my safe?" "Mr. Caldwell." The assistant said, her voice shaking slightly, but her resolve firm. "The chairman cleared the office this morning." The chairman, Preston, spat the word out. "My father is a senile old man. He does not know what he is doing. Get the board members in the conference room. Now. I am removing him. I am declaring him incompetent. We are going to vote him out today." He pushed past her and ran down the hall to the main boardroom. He threw the double doors open. The room was empty except for Jonathan Eves, who was sitting calmly at the far end of the long mahogany table reviewing a file. "Where are they?" Preston shouted, slamming his hands on the table. "Where is the board? I called an emergency meeting." "There is no meeting, Preston," Jonathan said without looking up. The board already met. At 8 a.m., via conference call, they voted unanimously to ratify the chairman's decision. "What decision?" Preston demanded. "To terminate you for cause," Jonathan said, closing the file. "You cannot terminate me," Preston screamed, his face turning a dangerous shade of purple. "I am the CEO. I run this company. My father is just a figurehead. He is incompetent. He is wearing gardening clothes for God's sake. He does not even know what day it is." "Is that so?" I spoke from the doorway behind him. My voice was not loud, but it filled the room instantly. Preston spun around. He froze. I was not wearing the stained linen suit. I was not wearing the gardener-esque clothes. I was wearing the charcoal Savile Row bespoke suit. My silk tie was knotted perfectly. My pocket square was crisp. I stood tall, my shoulders back, the posture of a man who has built skyscrapers and crushed competitors for 40 years. Dad, Preston whispered, taking a step back. You look. I look like the chairman of the board." I finished for him, walking slowly into the room. "I look like the man who built this table you are leaning on. I look like the man who signed your paychecks for your entire adult life." I walked past him. He smelled of fear and sweat. I smelled of expensive cologne and absolute power. I walked to the head of the table. His seat, the CEO's chair. I pulled it out and sat down. The leather creaked. I placed my hands on the table and looked at him. "Sit down, Preston," I said, pointing to one of the side chairs. "The chairs for subordinates." He hesitated, then sank into the chair, looking small and defeated. "Dad, please," he started, his voice trembling. "This has gone too far. Monica is outside on the sidewalk. Tiffany is hysterical. We have no money. We have no home. You made your point. Okay, we learned the lesson. Just stop this. Give me access to the accounts so I can fix this. Fix it, I repeated. You want to fix it. I reached under the table and pulled out a thick, heavy dossier. I threw it across the mahogany surface. It slid until it hit Preston's hands. Open it, I commanded. He opened the folder. His eyes widened as he saw the first page, then the second, then the third. These are not just expense reports, Preston, I said, my voice cold and hard. These are forensic accounting records. I had the auditors go back 5 years. Do you know what they found? Preston did not speak. He could not. He was staring at his own signature on invoices for shell companies that did not exist. They found $3 million, Preston. $3 million of company funds diverted to pay for personal expenses that you hid under consulting fees. That is accounting error, Preston stammered, but he knew. He knew I had him. No, son. An accounting error is a decimal point in the wrong place. This is theft. This is embezzlement. I pointed to a specific document. $400,000 for a diamond necklace for Monica billed as IT infrastructure upgrades. $200,000 for Tiffany's Sweet 16 party billed as a client appreciation event. You stole from me, Preston. You stole from the company. You stole from the employees whose families depend on this business. Dad, I can explain. You can explain it to the district attorney I cut him off, because that is who is receiving a copy of this file in exactly 1 hour. Preston dropped the file. He looked at me with genuine terror. Dad, you wouldn't. I am your son. You wouldn't send me to jail. I looked at him. I looked for the little boy I used to play catch with. I looked for the young man I sent to college. All I saw was a thief who had laughed while his daughter poured juice on me. You fired me from the family last night, Preston, I said quietly. You told me to disappear. You said I was a liability. Well, I am removing the liability from my company. You are fired, Preston, effective immediately. And since you used company funds to buy that jewelry for your wife and those bags for your daughter, the company is reclaiming its assets. That is why the sheriff took them. But prison. Preston whispered, tears leaking from his eyes. Dad, please. The doors opened behind him. 2 large uniformed security guards stepped in. They were not the regular building security. These were private contractors, ex-military men I used for high-risk terminations. Mr. Caldwell, one of them said, nodding to me. Escort the former CEO out of the building, I said without looking away from Preston. He is banned from the premises. If he returns, arrest him for trespassing. The guards stepped forward. One of them grabbed Preston's arm. Let's go, sir, the guard said. Preston tried to shake him off. Dad, wait. We can work this out. I will pay it back. I will do anything. You cannot pay it back, Preston, I said, standing up. Because you have nothing. You are bankrupt. You are homeless. And you are unemployed. You wanted to be a big man. You wanted to run the show. Well, go ahead. The world is waiting for you outside those doors. Go show them what you are worth without my name on your credit card. Dad. Preston screamed as the guards dragged him toward the door. Dad. Please. They hauled him out of the boardroom. His shoes squeaked on the polished floor. He was shouting, begging, crying. The doors swung shut, cutting off his voice. Silence returned to the room. I stood alone at the head of the table. My heart was pounding a slow, heavy rhythm. It did not feel like victory. It felt like amputation. I had cut off a gangrenous limb to save the body. It was necessary, but God, it hurt. I sat back down in the CEO's chair. I looked at the empty room. I had built this empire for him. I had worked 18-hour days for 40 years so he could have this chair, and he had treated it like a piggy bank. Jonathan walked in from the side office where he had been waiting. "The police are on standby downstairs," he said softly. "Just in case he gets violent in the lobby, he won't," I said, staring at the grain of the wood table. "He is a coward, Jonathan. Cowards don't fight. They run." "What do you want to do about the DA?" Jonathan asked, pointing to the dossier. "Do we really send it?" I looked at the file. I thought about Monica calling me the gardener. I thought about Preston turning his back. "Send it," I said. "If I save him from the consequences now, he will never learn. He needs to hit the bottom. The real bottom." Jonathan nodded and picked up the file. "I will take care of it." I turned my chair to look out the window. Down below on the busy sidewalk, I could see a tiny figure being pushed out of the building. He stumbled, looking lost in the crowd. He was just another man in a shirt now. No title, no power, no father to save him. I watched until he disappeared into the mass of people. "Goodbye, son," I whispered. Then I swiveled the chair back to the desk. I picked up the phone and dialed the number for my private investigator, Detective Miller. "Miller," I said when he answered. "They are on the street. I want to know where they go. I want to know who they call. And I want to know specifically about Monica. I have a feeling my daughter-in-law has secrets that cost a lot of money. Find them." I hung up. The coup was over. The king had returned. Now it was time to hunt. The hours following Preston's expulsion from the Caldwell Tower were perhaps the most illuminating of his entire life, though not in the way he would have chosen. I did not just watch him leave the building. I watched what happened next through the digital footprint that was the only thing left of his existence. While I sat in the executive suite reclaiming the authority I had ceded too easily, my son was on the sidewalk discovering the true nature of his social circle. For years, Preston had surrounded himself with a court of sycophants. Men who drank his scotch, laughed at his jokes, and rode on his yacht. He called them his inner circle. He thought they loved him for his wit and his business acumen. He was about to learn that they only loved him for his proximity to my checkbook. I saw the call logs later. Preston stood on the corner of 57th Street and began dialing. He called his best friend from college, a man named Richard, who ran a hedge fund I had invested in heavily. Richard had spent the last 5 summers at our Hamptons estate for free. I imagined the conversation. Preston likely asked for a temporary loan, just a few thousand, to tide him over until this misunderstanding with his father was sorted out. He probably tried to laugh it off as a clerical error, a banking glitch. Richard blocked his number 2 minutes after the call ended. Then Preston called his golf partner, a real estate developer, who was struggling to secure financing for a project in Brooklyn, a project Preston had promised to back with Caldwell funds. That call lasted less than 30 seconds. When the money dries up, the fair weather friends evaporate like mist in the sun. Meanwhile, on the streets of Manhattan, the sun was setting. The humidity had broken into a cold drizzle. Preston and Monica had exhausted their list of friends. They had been turned away from 3 hotels. They were tired, hungry, and carrying luggage that was worth more than the average car, but was completely useless to them now. They ended up in a 24-hour coffee shop near the bus terminal. It was a place for transients and tourists who had lost their way. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The coffee was burnt. I know this because my private investigator had picked up their trail again. He sent me a photo from outside the window. They were sitting in a booth. Monica was staring out the window, her face a mask of fury. Tiffany was asleep with her head on the table using a napkin dispenser as a pillow. Preston was counting the crumpled bills in his wallet. He had spent $10 on a cab and $15 on coffee and sandwiches. He had $15 left to his name. $15. Yesterday, he was the CEO of a $40 million company. Today, he could not afford a combo meal. I zoomed in on the photo. I looked at Monica's face. She wasn't looking at Preston with concern. She wasn't comforting him. She was looking at her reflection in the glass, checking her makeup, calculating her next move. She was already detaching. She was already looking for an exit strategy. I knew then that the text messages I would later find were inevitable. She was a survivor, and survivors do not cling to sinking ships. While my son and his family were discovering the harsh realities of a $49 a night motel room on the outskirts of Queens, I was sitting in a booth at a 24-hour diner across from Detective Miller. The contrast could not have been starker. They were likely fighting over who got to use the single thin towel provided by the motel management while I was sipping coffee and looking at the anatomy of their destruction spread out on a formica table. Miller slid a manila envelope across the table. He looked tired, but satisfied, the look of a hunter who had just bagged a trophy buck. "You were right," Miller said, his voice low, competing with the hum of the refrigerator behind the counter. The math did not add up. Even with the clothes and the cars and the parties, they were burning through cash faster than they could physically spend it on retail. I followed the money, Bernie, and the money led to some very interesting places. I opened the envelope. Inside were photos. High-resolution surveillance shots taken with a telephoto lens. I expected to see receipts for more jewelry. Maybe a hidden vacation home. What I saw made my stomach turn. The first set of photos showed Monica. My daughter-in-law, who had stood in my home and called me a gardener, was pictured sitting at an outdoor cafe in Manhattan. She looked radiant happy in a way she never looked with Preston. Across from her sat a man who looked to be about 25 years old. He was wearing a tight t-shirt that showed off Jim's sculpted muscles. He was handsome in a vacuous plastic sort of way. In the photos, Monica was leaning across the table, touching his hand. In another, she was handing him a set of keys. In a third, she was kissing him. It was not a friendly kiss. It was the kind of kiss that destroys marriages. "Who is he?" I asked, staring at the image of the woman who had ruined my son's life. "His name is Chad Miller," said, consulting his notebook. "He is a personal trainer at the exclusive gym where Monica spends 4 mornings a week. Or where she says she spends 4 mornings a week." I looked closer at the keys she was handing him. "Is that a car key?" I asked. "It is," Miller confirmed. "A brand new Mercedes C-Class. Registered to a shell company called Fitness Consulting Group. Guess who pays the lease on that shell company?" "Preston," I whispered. Preston Miller nodded. "Or rather, Caldwell Holdings. Your son has been embezzling money to pay for his wife's boy Toy's car, his apartment in Soho, and his $5,000 a month allowance." Monica told Preston these were legitimate consulting expenses for wellness programs for the staff. I felt a wave of nausea. My son was not just a thief. He was a fool. He was stealing from his father to pay for another man to sleep with his wife. He was risking prison to finance his own cuckolding. "It gets worse," Miller said, sliding a second stack of photos across the table. These were of Tiffany, my granddaughter. The girl who cared more about her aesthetic than her grandfather's dignity. The photos showed her huddled in a corner of her prep school campus, talking to a group of older boys who looked like they belonged in a mugshot lineup, not a private school. She looked terrified. "Tiffany has a problem," Miller said. "It started with loot boxes in video games, then moved to online crypto casinos. She got hooked on the rush, Bernie. She is 16 years old, and she is a degenerate gambler." How much, I asked, dreading the answer. "She is down about $40,000, Miller said. And she did not borrow it from a bank. She borrowed it from a booking agent connected to that group of kids. They are threatening to leak compromising photos of her if she does not pay. That is why she needed the handbags. She wasn't just collecting them. She was reselling some of them online to make payments on the VIG." I sat back in the booth. The diner noise faded away. I tried to process the level of rot in my family. I had thought they were just greedy, I thought they were just shallow. But this was different. This was a cancer. Monica was a predator. She had found a weak man, my son, and she was bleeding him dry while she built a golden parachute with her lover. She didn't love Preston. She probably despised him. She viewed him as a resource, a host organism. And Preston, my poor, stupid son. He was so busy trying to be the big man, trying to impress her, trying to buy her love, that he didn't see she was laughing at him. He was destroying his career, his reputation, and his relationship with me for a woman who was driving a Mercedes he paid for to go sleep with a gym rat. And Tiffany was a victim of her own entitlement, drowning in a world she was not equipped to handle, thinking money could fix everything until the money ran out. "This changes things, Miller," I said, putting the photos back in the envelope. "How so?" Miller asked, taking a bite of his toast. "I thought I was teaching them a lesson about gratitude," I said. "But I need to save my son from a shark. He is going to prison, Miller. The embezzlement charges I filed this morning will stick. But if he goes to prison still married to that woman, she will divorce him, take half of whatever he has left, and ride off into the sunset with Chad. She won't get much," Miller pointed out. "You froze the assets. She will get his dignity," I said. "She will get the satisfaction of knowing she played him until the very end. I cannot let that happen." "What do you want to do?" Miller asked. "I want everything," I said. "I want the deed to the apartment she bought for Chad. I want the text messages between them. I want proof that she knew about the embezzlement and encouraged it. I want to know if she was planning to leave him." Miller pulled a small flash drive from his pocket and slid it across the table. "It is all here," he said. "I cloned her phone while she was at the salon last week. You have every text, every email, every photo. And yes, she was planning to leave him. She was waiting for the trust transfer today. Her plan was to wait until Preston had control of the $50 million, then divorce him and ask for half. She texted Chad about it 2 days ago. She called Preston the Golden Goose." The Golden Goose. I took the flash drive. It felt heavy in my hand. This was the ammunition I needed. This was the weapon that would finally cut the cord. I looked at the time. It was late afternoon. In the motel room, Preston was probably trying to figure out how to feed his family on $40. He was probably terrified. He was probably looking at Monica and thinking she was the only person in the world who stood by him. He had no idea she was the architect of his ruin. I paid the bill and left the diner. I walked through the Queens streets feeling the weight of the flash drive in my pocket. I had to play this perfectly. If I just told Preston now, he wouldn't believe me. He was too proud, too brainwashed. He would think I was lying to hurt him. He had to see it. He had to be cornered. He had to have no other choice but to look at the truth. I hailed a cab. "Take me to the Golden Horizon Motel," I told the driver. The driver looked at me in the rearview mirror. "You sure, buddy? That is not a nice place." "I know," I said. "My family is staying there." When we pulled up to the motel, it was even more depressing than I imagined. The neon sign was flickering, missing the letter O, so it read MTL. There were rusted cars in the parking lot, and people loitering on the balconies who looked like they were waiting for something illegal to happen. I saw them through the window of room 104. The curtains were thin, and they had left the light on. Preston was sitting on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. Monica was pacing, yelling at him, pointing a finger in his face. Tiffany was curled up in a ball on the other bed, staring at her phone, which only worked on Wi-Fi now. I watched them for a moment. This was the rock bottom I had engineered. But now, knowing what I knew, it looked different. It wasn't just punishment. It was an extraction zone. I needed to get Preston out of there. I needed to perform surgery on his life. I walked to the door and knocked 3 times. The yelling stopped instantly. I heard footsteps. The door opened a crack held by the safety chain. Preston peered out. He looked 10 years older than he had this morning. His eyes were red, his shirt was stained with sweat. When he saw me, a mix of hope and shame crossed his face. "Dad," he whispered. "Open the door, son," I said softly. "We need to talk." He fumbled with the chain and opened the door. The smell of the room hit me, stale smoke, mold, and despair. Monica froze when she saw me. She crossed her arms, her eyes narrowing. She didn't look broken. She looked calculating. She was probably wondering if I had come to rescue them, if the golden goose had returned, to be plucked one last time. "Hello, Monica," I said, stepping inside. "What do you want?" she snapped. "Haven't you done enough?" I ignored her. I looked at Tiffany, who wouldn't meet my eyes. Then I looked at Preston. "I am here to make you an offer," I said. Preston's head snapped up. "An offer, yes. I am prepared to give you a second chance. I am prepared to unlock the house, unlock the cars, and give you access to a limited credit line." Monica's eyes lit up. I saw the greed flash across her face like lightning. She stepped forward, pushing Preston slightly aside. "Really?" she said, her voice suddenly sweet. "You mean it? You realize you overreacted?" "I mean it," I said. "But there is a condition. A non-negotiable condition." "What is it?" Preston asked. "Anything, Dad. Anything." I looked at Monica. I looked at the woman who was spending my money on a boyfriend while my son risked jail for her. I reached into my pocket and touched the flash drive. "I will tell you over dinner," I said. "I am inviting you to my apartment. Tonight. We will eat. We will talk, and then, Preston, you will have to make a choice." "A choice?" Preston asked. "Yes," I said, looking him dead in the eye. "You will have to decide what matters more to you, the truth or the lie you have been living." "Be at my apartment at 7, I said. "Do not be late." I turned and walked out, leaving them in the stunned silence of the motel room. I knew they would come. Hunger and greed are powerful motivators. But they had no idea that the dinner I was serving tonight was not going to be food. It was going to be the end of their marriage. Inside room 104, the atmosphere shifted the moment the door clicked shut behind me. I had left them with an ultimatum, but Monica saw it as an opportunity. I learned later from Tiffany exactly what transpired in those cramped walls during the hour before they came to my apartment. Preston was hyperventilating, pacing the stained carpet, terrified of the choice I had laid out. He wanted to give up. He wanted to come to me and confess everything, hoping for mercy. But Monica would not let him. She did not comfort her husband, she handled him. She grabbed his face with her manicured claws and slapped him hard enough to leave a mark. She told him that honesty was a luxury they could no longer afford. She coached him like a director preparing an actor for the performance of a lifetime. She told him to kneel. She told him to cry. She told him that I was a weak, sentimental old man who was desperate to be needed. She fixed his collar and messed up his hair, not out of affection, but to make him look pathetic enough to trigger my sympathy. It was a cold, calculated rehearsal for a robbery. Tiffany watched it all from the corner, realizing for the first time that her mother was not a victim. She was the architect of their ruin. They arrived at my door at 7 o'clock sharp, just as I had instructed. I was waiting for them, sitting in my worn armchair, with a clear view of the hallway through the peephole. I watched them come up the stairs. It was a pathetic procession. Preston was dragging the suitcases, bumping them against the narrow walls of the stairwell. Monica was holding a tissue to her nose as if the very air of my building was toxic. Tiffany trailed behind them, looking at her phone, which was likely useless without a data plan, but old habits die hard. I let them knock 3 times before I stood up. I wanted them to sweat. I wanted them to wonder if I had changed my mind. When I finally opened the door, the smell of their desperation hit me harder than the cheap perfume Monica was wearing to mask the scent of the motel. They stood there huddled together like refugees from a luxury catalog that had been left out in the rain. "Hello, Dad," Preston said, his voice cracking. "Can we come in?" I stepped aside and gestured for them to enter. The apartment was small. With 4 people inside, it felt claustrophobic. They looked around at the peeling paint, the mismatched furniture, the small television that sat on a milk crate. I saw the flash of disgust in Monica's eyes before she quickly masked it. She was a professional, after all. "Oh, Dad," Monica said, her voice trembling with forced emotion. It is cozy. I am so sorry we have not visited you here before. We have just been so busy with the business and the house. We never realized how humble your life was." She walked over to me and reached out to touch my arm. Her hands were cold. "We have been so selfish," she continued, and then the tears started. They were impressive tears, big wet drops that rolled down her cheeks without ruining her mascara. She must have practiced in the motel mirror. "I am so sorry for what happened at the party, Bernie. I was stressed. I was drinking. The pressure of hosting the mayor and all those people. I just snapped. I didn't mean a word of it. You know I love you like my own father, don't you?" I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had spent $400,000 of my money on a necklace while I lived in this box. I looked at the woman who was sleeping with a personal trainer while my son embezzled millions to keep her happy. Her performance was Academy Award material. If I didn't know about Chad, if I didn't have the photos in my pocket, I might have believed her. I stayed silent, letting her talk. Silence is a vacuum, and liars always rush to fill it. And Tiffany, Monica said, pulling her daughter forward. "Tell Grandpa how sorry you are, sweetie." Tiffany looked up. Her eyes were red-rimmed. She looked genuinely miserable, but not because she had hurt me. She was miserable because she was cut off from her digital life and her gambling debts were looming over her head. "I am sorry, Grandpa," she mumbled, looking at her shoes. "I should not have spilled the juice. It was an accident." "I love you." An accident. She had called me a disgusting old man on a live stream, but I nodded slowly, keeping my face impassive. "And Preston." My son did not just speak. He dropped to his knees. He actually knelt on the linoleum floor of my kitchen, right there in front of his wife and daughter. It was a gesture of total submission, but it made my stomach turn. A man should only kneel to God. Seeing my son beg like this was not a victory. It was a tragedy. "Dad, please," Preston sobbed, grabbing my hand. "We were wrong. We were so wrong. We got lost, Dad. The money, it changed us. But these last 2 days, losing everything, it woke us up. We realized that without you, we are nothing. Not because of the money, but because you are the head of this family. Please forgive us. We will do anything. Just please open the accounts again. Not for the luxury. Just so we can live. Just so we can come home." He buried his face in my hand, weeping. I looked down at the top of his head. I saw the thinning hair that reminded me of my own. I felt the wetness of his tears on my skin. For a moment, just a fleeting second, my resolve wavered. He was my boy. He was suffering. Maybe he really had learned. Maybe the shock of the eviction and the firing had been enough. Maybe I could just give them a small allowance, help them get back on their feet, and pretend the embezzlement never happened. Maybe I could be the father who saves the day one last time. Then I looked up. Over Preston's heaving shoulders, I saw Monica. She thought I was focused on my son. She thought I was having a tender, emotional moment. She had stepped back slightly toward the window, ostensibly to give us space. She had her phone in her hand. She was typing furiously, her thumbs flying across the screen. I shifted my gaze just an inch. The reflection in the dark window glass was faint, but it was clear enough. I have excellent eyesight. It is one of the few things age hasn't taken from me yet. I saw the green bubble of a text message. I saw the name at the top of the chat. Chad. And I saw the message she was sending. Hold on, baby. Keep the champagne on ice. The old man is crying. He is about to crack. I will have the cards back in an hour. Love you. The text sent. She slipped the phone back into her pocket and looked up at me. Her face instantly transformed back into a mask of concern and remorse. She wiped a tear from her eye and gave me a brave, hopeful smile. My heart didn't break. It froze. It turned into a block of absolute zero ice. The last shred of doubt vanished. The last tiny hope that my family was salvageable evaporated in that kitchen. They were not here for forgiveness. They were here for a transaction. They were vultures circling what they thought was a dying animal waiting to pick the bones clean. Monica was not sorry. She was impatient. She was updating her lover on the progress of her con. She was laughing at me while my son knelt at my feet. I took a deep breath. I let a slow, warm smile spread across my face. It was the best acting performance of my life. Better than Monica S., because mine was born of necessity. I reached down and placed my other hand on Preston S.'s shoulder. I squeezed it gently. "Stand up, son," I said, my voice thick with fake emotion. "Stand up." Preston looked up, hope flooding his face. He scrambled to his feet, wiping his eyes. "Dad," he whispered. I looked at Monica. I looked at Tiffany. I opened my arms wide. "You are my family," I said, "and family forgives. I can see that you have suffered. I can see that you are sorry. And that is all I wanted. To know that you still cared about me." "Oh, Bernie." Monica cried, rushing forward to hug me. "Thank you. Thank you so much. You are a saint." She hugged me tight. I could feel her heart beating. I wondered if she was thinking about Chad right now. I wondered if she was mentally spending the money she thought she was about to get. I patted her back. "It is okay," I said. "It is all over now." So you will unfreeze the accounts?" Preston asked, his voice trembling with relief. "We can go back to the house." I pulled away gently. I smiled at them, the benevolent patriarch. "We will discuss the logistics after dinner," I said. "I cannot send you back to the house on an empty stomach. You look like you haven't eaten a real meal in days." "We haven't," Tiffany said, her voice small. "We ate vending machine crackers for lunch." "Well, that ends now," I said. "I have prepared a special dinner, just for us, a celebration of new beginnings." I gestured toward the small dining table where I had set 4 places. The plates were mismatched. The napkins were paper. But in the center of the table I had placed a single candle. "Sit down," I said. "Please, sit down." They moved to the table. They looked relieved, but I could see the underlying tension. They wanted the cards. They wanted the keys. They were tolerating the dinner as the price of admission. Monica sat down and gave me a sweet smile. "What are we having, Dad?" she asked. "It smells interesting." "It is a surprise," I said, walking to the kitchen counter. "I have been preparing it all afternoon. It is a dish that requires a lot of preparation, a lot of gathering of ingredients." I picked up the tray. On it was a large soup tureen. It was filled with canned tomato soup, the cheapest kind I could find. I brought it to the table and set it down. "Soup," I said. "Simple, honest, warm." They looked at the soup. They looked at each other. They were expecting steaks. They were expecting lobster. They were expecting me to celebrate their return with a feast. But they didn't complain. They were too close to the prize to risk it now. "It looks delicious," Monica lied. I ladled the soup into their bowls. "Eat," I said, "and then I will give you what you want." They picked up their spoons. They ate the watery soup. They forced smiles. I watched them. I watched Monica checking her watch beneath the table. I watched Preston glancing at the door. They thought they had won. They thought they had played the old man perfectly. They had no idea that the soup was just the appetizer. The main course was in my pocket, on a small black flash drive. I waited until they had finished. I waited until they had wiped their mouths with the paper napkins. "That was wonderful, Dad," Preston said. "Now about the house." "Yes," I said, leaning back in my chair. "About the house and the money and the future." I reached into my pocket. "I have a proposition for you," I said. Preston leaned forward, eager. "Yes, Dad. Anything. I am prepared to give you everything back," I said. "The house, the cars, the credit limit. I will even reinstate you at the company, although in a lower position to start." "Oh, thank God," Monica exhaled, closing her eyes. But I continued, my voice hardening just a fraction. "There is one condition. One non-negotiable condition." "What is it?" Preston asked. "We will do it. Whatever it is." I looked at Monica. I looked her dead in the eye. I saw the fear flicker there for the first time. She sensed a shift. She sensed the trap. "The condition," I said slowly, "is that you must divorce Monica immediately. She leaves with nothing. No settlement, no alimony, no access to the family. She walks out that door tonight, and she never comes back." The silence in the room was deafening. It was heavier than the air in the tomb. Preston looked at me, his mouth agape. What he whispered. Monica looked at me, her face draining of color. She looked from me to Preston, then back to me. "You are joking," she laughed nervously. "That is a terrible joke, Bernie." "I am not joking," I said. "That is the deal. You choose Preston. You choose the life of wealth and security with your father and your daughter. Or you choose your wife and you walk out of here with nothing. Forever." "Dad, you can't be serious," Preston stammered. "I love her. She is my wife. We are a team." "Are you?" I asked. "Are you really a team, Preston? Or are you a host and a parasite? How dare you?" Monica stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "How dare you try to break up my family? You are a sick, bitter old man. Preston, tell him to go to hell." I stayed seated. I stayed calm. "I am waiting, Preston," I said. "Make your choice." Preston looked at his wife. He looked at the woman he had stolen millions for. He looked at the woman he thought loved him. "Dad, I can't," he said, tears filling his eyes again. "I can't leave her. I love her." I nodded. I expected that answer. I reached under the table where I had taped a thick manila envelope. I pulled it loose. "I thought you might say that, son," I said. I tossed the envelope onto the table. It landed next to Monica's empty soup bowl. "Before you make your final decision," I said, "I think you should look at what your wife has been doing with the money you stole for her." "What is this?" Preston asked, reaching for the envelope. "It is the reason I am asking you to leave her," I said. "It is the truth. Open it." "Don't touch it, Preston." Monica said, her voice suddenly shrill with panic. "It is lies. He manufactured evidence. He is trying to trick you. If it is lies, then you have nothing to fear," I said. "Open it, Preston. Look at what you are defending." Preston hesitated. He looked at Monica's panicked face. The doubt crept into his eyes. He reached out and opened the clasp. He pulled out the stack of photographs. The first one fell onto the table face up. It was high resolution, crystal clear. It showed Monica in the lobby of the Mercer Hotel in Soho. She was wearing a dress Preston had bought her for their anniversary. She was not alone. She was wrapped in the arms of a man who looked like he belonged on the cover of a fitness magazine. His hand was on her lower back. Her face was buried in his neck. Preston froze. He stared at the photo. Monica gasped. She lunged for the table, trying to snatch the pictures. "No," she screamed. "Give me that." I caught her wrist. My grip was surprisingly strong. "Let him look," I said coldly. Preston pulled out the second photo. Monica and the man kissing in a restaurant. The third photo. Monica handing the man a set of keys to a new Porsche. Preston's hands started to shake. He dropped the stack. They fanned out across the table like a deck of cards from hell. There were copies of bank transfers, copies of text messages. "I paid for that car, Preston," I said, pointing to the photo of the Porsche. "Or rather, you paid for it with money you embezzled from my company. You stole $3 million to buy luxury items for your wife, and she used that money to buy a car for her boyfriend. His name is Chad. He is 24 years old." Preston picked up a sheet of paper. It was a transcript of a text message. "Golden Goose just left for the office," it read. "Coming over now. Champagne is on me." Preston made a sound like a wounded animal, a low, guttural whimper. He looked up at Monica. His face was gray. You cheated on me," he whispered. Monica's face twisted. The mask of the loving wife dissolved. She yanked her wrist from my grip and stepped back. "So what?" she spat. Preston flinched as if she had slapped him. "So what?" she yelled, her voice raucous and ugly. "Look at you, Preston. Look at yourself. You are pathetic. You are a spineless daddy's boy who can't do anything without asking for permission. Do you think I was with you for your personality? You are boring. You are weak. Chad is twice the man you are." Preston stood there, swaying on his feet. The devastation was total. But I loved you," he choked out. "I gave you everything. You gave me nothing." Monica laughed cruelly. "Your father gave me everything. You were just the delivery boy. And you were not even good at that. You let him catch you. You let him cut us off. You are useless to me now." She turned to me, her eyes blazing with hatred. "And you," she hissed. "You think you won. You think you are smart. You are just a sad, lonely old man who has to buy affection." I stood up slowly. I smoothed my tie. "I am not buying affection, Monica," I said. "I am buying my son's freedom, and it is a bargain at any price." Preston looked at the photos scattered on the table. He looked at the wife who was looking at him with pure contempt. He looked at me, the father who had just destroyed his world to save him from it. I waited for him to come to me. I waited for him to say, "Dad, you were right. I am sorry." But Monica saw it too. She was a survivor, a predator, who knew exactly when her prey was about to bolt. She knew she had seconds to salvage her golden goose before he flew away forever. She did not run, she did not apologize. Instead, she launched a counteroffensive that was breathtaking in its audacity. She stepped forward, closing the distance between them. She reached out and grabbed Preston's face, forcing him to look at her, the photos. "Look at me," she screamed, her voice shrill and piercing. "Look at me, Preston. Do not look at those lies. Do not look at that garbage." Preston blinked, tears streaming down his face. "But Monica, the car, the apartment. It is fake," she yelled, shaking him. "Can't you see what he is doing? He hates us. He has always hated me because I am strong. He used Photoshop Preston. He hired someone to doctor these images. It is digital manipulation. Anyone can do it these days. He is trying to frame me." I sat there, stunned by the sheer brazenness of the lie. "Monica," I said, my voice calm. "I have the bank transfer records. I have the texts from your phone." "Shut up," Monica shrieked, spinning around to glare at me before turning back to Preston. You see how he looks at us. He is enjoying this. He wants to destroy our marriage because he is a lonely, miserable old man who can't stand to see us happy. He wants to control you, Preston. He has controlled you your whole life. He dangles his money like a carrot and makes you jump. Are you going to let him win? Are you going to let him separate us?" Preston looked at me. His eyes were wide, filled with confusion and pain. He looked back at the photos in his hand. The evidence was irrefutable. But the truth is a painful thing. It requires courage to accept. It requires admitting that you have been a fool. And my son, as I was about to learn, was not a brave man. He looked at Monica. She was staring at him with an intensity that mimicked love. "I am the only one who loves you," she whispered urgently. "I am the only one who stood by you when he kicked us out. Choose Preston. Choose me or choose the man who wants to see you die alone." It was the tipping point. I saw the exact moment his spine dissolved. I saw the moment he decided that living a lie was easier than facing the shame of the truth. Preston's expression changed. The sorrow vanished, replaced by a cold, irrational fury. He crumpled the photographs in his fist. He turned to me. His face was twisted into a sneer that looked disturbingly like his wife's. "You think you are so smart?" he spat. "You think you can just manufacture this filth and I will believe you over my own wife?" "Preston," I said warningly. "Look at the facts." "To hell with your facts," he screamed. He pulled his arm back and threw the crumpled ball of photos directly at my face. The paper hit my cheek with a sharp sting and fell to the floor. "You are a monster!" he yelled, his voice shaking with rage. "You are a scumbag, Dad. You invited us here to humiliate us. You fabricated all of this to destroy my family because you are jealous." I did not flinch. I just watched him. "I am trying to save you," I said quietly. "Save me." He laughed, a bitter, unhinged sound. "You are trying to own me, but you can't. Not anymore. I will never leave her. Do you hear me? Never. She is my wife and we are going to fight you." Monica smiled. It was a small, triumphant curve of her lips that she hid behind Preston's shoulder. "And you know what else?" Preston continued, stepping closer to me, his finger pointing in my face. "We are not just leaving. We are going to make you pay for this." "Is that so?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "You are unstable. This whole thing, the eviction, the firing, the fake photos, it proves you have lost your mind. You have dementia, Dad. You are not competent to manage your own affairs." I sat very still. "We are going to sue you," Preston hissed. "We are going to file for emergency guardianship. We are going to prove to a court that you are mentally incapacitated, and we are going to take control of the trust. We are going to put you in a facility, where you can't hurt anyone else. And then we are going to take everything." Monica stepped up beside him, slipping her arm through his. "Come on, darling," she said, her voice dripping with victory. "Let's go. We have to call a lawyer. We have to save your father from himself." Preston looked at me one last time. There was no love in his eyes, only hatred and greed. "You did this," he said. "Remember that. You made us do this." They turned and walked toward the door. Tiffany, who had been watching in silent horror, stood up. "Dad," she said, "you can't be serious. He showed you the pictures." "Mom is—" "Shut up, Tiffany." Preston snapped, not even looking at her. "Your grandfather is sick. We are doing what is best for the family. Now let's go." Tiffany looked at me, tears streaming down her face. She looked at her father, who was being led away by her mother, like a dog on a leash. She hesitated for a second, then hung her head and followed them. The door slammed shut. I sat alone in the dim light of the kitchen. The crumpled photos lay on the linoleum floor like trash. The echo of my son's threats hung in the air. Guardianship, facility, incompetent. He wanted to sue me for guardianship. He wanted to question my mental state in a court of law. He had no idea that he had just walked into the biggest trap of all. I picked up my phone and dialed Jonathan. It is done, I said, my voice steady and strong. They refused the deal. And Jonathan, get the litigation team ready. Why, Jonathan asked. Because my son is going to sue me for guardianship, I said. He is going to try to prove I am senile. There was a pause on the line, and then I heard Jonathan let out a low, dark chuckle. He is going to try to prove you are incompetent in open court. Yes, I said. That is the stupidest thing he has ever done, Jonathan said. I know, I replied, looking at the crumpled photo on the floor. But it will be the last stupid thing he ever does. Let them file the papers. Let them drag this into the light. Because when we get to court, I am going to show the judge exactly who is crazy and who is criminal. The courtroom smelled of floor wax and old wood, the scent of judgment. I sat at the defendant's table next to Jonathan, my hands resting calmly on the polished surface. Across the aisle, my son Preston and his wife Monica sat with their lawyer, a high-priced shark they had likely hired on a contingency fee, promising him a slice of the $50 million pie they thought they were about to inherit. They looked the part of the grieving, concerned family. Monica was wearing a modest navy dress, wiping dry eyes with a tissue every time the judge looked her way. Preston was in a suit that was too tight around the collar, looking solemn and pained. They were putting on the performance of their lives. The Honorable Judge Sterling, a woman with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense, called the court to order. This is a hearing for emergency guardianship, she stated, looking over her glasses. The petitioners allege that Mr. Bernard Caldwell is suffering from advanced cognitive decline and poses a financial and physical risk to himself. Proceed. Their lawyer stood up. He painted a picture of a man losing his mind. He described the eviction as a manic episode. He described the dinner at my apartment as a cruel, erratic game played by a man who had lost his grip on reality. Your Honor, he boomed, pointing a finger at me. Mr. Caldwell threw his own family onto the street without warning. He lured them to a squalid apartment, only to mock them with cans of soup and paranoid delusions about conspiracies. This is not the behavior of a sane man. This is a cry for help. We are asking the court to grant Mr. Preston Caldwell full conservatorship over the estate to protect his father from further self-destruction. Preston nodded sadly, playing the dutiful son to perfection. Monica dabbed her eyes again. The judge looked at me. Mr. Caldwell, do you have a response? I did not speak. I simply nodded to Jonathan. Jonathan stood up. He did not bluster. He did not shout. He simply walked to the center of the room, holding a remote control. Your Honor, Jonathan said, his voice calm and measured. The defense does not dispute that my client evicted his family. We do, however, dispute the motive. This was not mania. This was a response to abuse. And we have receipts. He pointed the remote at the large screen on the wall. Exhibit A, Jonathan said. The video played. It was the recording from the Sweet 16 party captured from the venue's security feed and synced with the audio from Tiffany's own live stream, which we had subpoenaed. The courtroom watched in silence as Tiffany screamed at me, "Get out, you useless old man." They watched the grape juice hit my chest. They watched Preston turn his back. They watched Monica hiss, "You look like the gardener." The air in the room changed. The judge's expression hardened. Monica stopped dabbing her eyes and started shifting in her seat. This is not a confused old man, Jonathan narrated. This is a man being publicly humiliated by the people who are living off his generosity. But this was just the beginning. Exhibit B, Jonathan announced. The screen flickered. It was the grainy but clear footage from the hidden camera in my apartment kitchen. The date stamp was from 2 nights ago. The audio was crisp. Monica's voice filled the courtroom, loud and hateful. He is just a sad, lonely old man who has to buy affection. The text message to Chad was read aloud by a narrator we had hired for clarity. Golden goose just left. Old man is crying. Preston's head snapped up. He stared at the screen, seeing the moment of his own betrayal played back for the legal record. The judge looked at Monica with pure disgust. Monica shrank into her chair, her face pale. "Your Honor," Jonathan continued, turning off the screen. "The petitioners claim Mr. Caldwell is incompetent because he cut off their funds. We submit that cutting off funds to people who abuse, humiliate, and exploit you is not a sign of dementia. It is a sign of extreme mental clarity." Their lawyer tried to object, stammering about privacy, but the judge waved him down. "Is there anything else, Mr. Eves?" she asked. "Yes, Your Honor," Jonathan said, dropping the final hammer. "The petitioners claim they want guardianship to protect the estate. However, we have evidence that Mr. Preston Caldwell is the single greatest threat to that estate." Jonathan walked to the judge's bench and handed her a thick binder. "These are forensic accounting records from Caldwell Holdings," he said. "They detail a 5-year history of embezzlement, fraud, and tax evasion committed by Mr. Preston Caldwell. He has diverted over $3 million of company funds to shell companies to pay for his wife's lifestyle and her extramarital affairs." The judge opened the binder. She flipped through the pages. Her eyebrows went up. She looked at Preston. "Mr. Caldwell," she asked, "is this true?" Preston stood up, his legs shaking. "Your Honor, it is complicated. I was managing—" "It is theft," Jonathan interrupted. "And it is not just a civil matter." At that moment, the heavy double doors at the back of the courtroom swung open. The sound was like a thunderclap. 4 men walked in. They were wearing windbreakers with bold yellow letters on the back. "U.S. Marshals." The leader of the group walked past the bar. He looked at Preston. "Preston Caldwell," he said, his voice booming. Preston looked at them. He looked at the judge. He looked at me. The terror on his face was absolute. "Yes," he whispered. "You are under arrest for federal wire fraud, embezzlement, and tax evasion," the marshal said, pulling a pair of handcuffs from his belt. "Step away from the table." Pandemonium broke out. Their lawyer threw his hands up, stepping away from Preston as if he were radioactive. Monica screamed, not a scream of concern for her husband, but a scream of realization that the game was over. Preston tried to run. It was a pathetic attempt. He stumbled over his own chair, scrambling backward. "Dad," he shrieked, reaching out to me. "Dad, stop them. Tell them it is a mistake. I am your son." I sat still. I watched the marshals grab him. They spun him around. The click of the handcuffs was loud and final. "You have the right to remain silent," the marshal recited, dragging him toward the door. Preston was sobbing now. Loud, ugly cries. "Monica, help me. Call someone." I looked at Monica. She was standing frozen. She looked at her husband being hauled away like a common criminal. She looked at the judge who was glaring at her. She looked at me. She saw the cold, hard truth in my eyes. The money was gone. The house was gone. The husband was gone. And she was next. She did not rush to help him. She did not call a lawyer. She grabbed her purse. She looked at the side exit. And she ran. Monica Preston screamed as he was dragged through the center aisle. "Monica, where are you going?" She did not look back. She pushed through the gate, her heels clacking frantically on the floor, and sprinted out the side door, leaving her husband alone in the grip of the law. The door swung shut behind her. Preston's wails faded as they took him into the hallway. The courtroom fell silent again. The judge let out a long breath. She looked at me. "Mr. Caldwell," she said, her voice soft. "I am dismissing this petition with prejudice, and frankly, I am sorry you had to go through this." "Thank you." "Your Honor," I said, standing up. I walked out of the courtroom. I did not look at the empty table where my son had sat. I did not look at the door where my daughter-in-law had fled. I walked out into the bright afternoon sun. I took a deep breath. The air tasted clean. It tasted like justice. I had done it. I had cut the rot out. It was over. 6 months have passed since the heavy oak doors of the courtroom swung shut on my former life. Time moves differently when you are no longer carrying the dead weight of 3 ungrateful adults on your back. It moves slower, but it is a rich, quiet kind of time. The kind of time you enjoy rather than just endure. I went to see Preston yesterday. It was not a social call. It was a requirement to finalize the severance of his legal ties to the company. The Federal Correctional Facility in Otisville is a cold, gray place. It smells of industrial cleaner and hopelessness. It is a far cry from the corner-off office with the view of the Hudson River. When the guards brought him into the visitation room, I almost didn't recognize him. The expensive haircuts were gone, replaced by a buzz cut that showed the gray coming in at his temples. The tailored Italian suits were replaced by a shapeless khaki jumpsuit with a number stenciled on the pocket. He had lost 20 pounds. He looked small. He looked like a child wearing a costume he didn't understand. He sat down on the other side of the plexiglass and picked up the phone. His hands were shaking. "Dad," he said, his voice tinny through the receiver. "I am so sorry. I miss you. I miss the house. I miss my life." He started to cry. It wasn't the manipulative crying he used to do to get a new car. This was the raw, ugly crying of a man who has realized that rock bottom has a basement. He told me about the food. He told me about the other inmates who didn't care that he used to be a CEO. He told me he was scared. I listened. I didn't interrupt. I let him pour out his regret. But as I watched him weeping about his lost comforts, I realized something profound. He wasn't crying because he missed me. He wasn't crying because he had hurt his father. He was crying because he missed the cushion I had provided. He was mourning the loss of the easy life, not the loss of the relationship. He was still blaming Monica. He was still blaming the system. He hadn't changed. He had just been stopped. I signed the papers he needed. I put my hand on the glass for a brief second. "Do your time, Preston," I said. "Learn to make your bed. Learn to work in the laundry. Learn what it means to earn a meal. It is the only education I have left to give you." I walked out of the prison, and I didn't look back. I didn't feel guilty. I felt lighter. Then there is Monica. My private investigator, Miller, sends me updates once a month. I don't ask for them out of malice. I ask for them because I need to be sure she never gets close to my assets again. The latest report came with a video file. Monica is living in a basement apartment in New Jersey. The Mercedes is gone. The jewelry was seized to pay the civil judgments. Chad, the personal trainer, disappeared the moment the credit cards stopped working. He didn't even say goodbye. In the video, Monica was wearing a gray uniform. She was pushing a heavy cart full of cleaning supplies down the hallway of a mid-range office building. She wasn't the lady of the manor anymore. She was the help. The video showed her manager, a short man with a clipboard, pointing at a spot on the floor she had missed. He was yelling at her. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw Monica's body language. She flinched. She looked down at her shoes. She mumbled an apology and got down on her knees to scrub the scuff mark. This was the woman who had screamed at waiters for bringing her sparkling water instead of still. This was the woman who had called me a gardener. Now she was scrubbing floors for minimum wage. It is a harsh reality. Some might say it is too harsh. But karma has a way of balancing the books that no accountant can match. She wanted a life where she didn't have to respect anyone. Now she has a life where no one respects her. She is learning the value of $1 the hard way, one scrub at a time. As for me, I am standing on the balcony of my new home. I sold the Hamptons estate. I sold the old apartment in Queens. I bought a penthouse in Tribeca. It is modern, sleek, and full of light. It has no memories of grape juice stains or family arguments. It is a clean slate. The sun is setting over the city, turning the Hudson River into a ribbon of gold. I am wearing a new suit. I bought it myself. I dressed myself. On the glass table in front of me sits a stack of documents. They are the final papers for the Bernard Caldwell Scholarship Fund. I liquidated the majority of the family trust. The $50 million that Preston and Monica wanted to steal will not go to building another mansion. It will not go to buying sports cars. It is going to pay for the college education of 200 underprivileged students every year. Kids who have grit. Kids who work hard. Kids who know the value of an opportunity because they have never had one. I looked at the list of the first recipients. There is a boy from the Bronx who wants to be an engineer. There is a girl from Queens who wants to be a doctor. They are strangers to me by blood, but they are my children by spirit. They are the legacy I always wanted. I uncorked a bottle of vintage Bordeaux. It is a 1982, the same year I started my company. I poured a glass. The deep red liquid swirled against the crystal. I am alone here. The apartment is quiet. There is no laughter of grandchildren, no chatter of family dinners. But there is also no deception. There is no theft. There is no one waiting for me to die so they can cash out. There is only peace. I picked up the pen and signed the last page of the scholarship fund. It was done. The money was safe. The future was secure. I walked to the edge of the balcony and looked out at the city lights blinking on one by one. I took a sip of the wine. It was rich, complex, and perfect. People tell you that family is everything. They tell you that you must sacrifice everything for your blood. They tell you that a lonely old man is a tragic figure. They are wrong. Preston and Monica thought that stripping me of my family would be the ultimate punishment. They thought I would crumble without them. They thought I would beg them to come back just to avoid the silence. But they didn't understand the nature of the man they were dealing with. They didn't understand that I built my life on foundations of steel, not marshmallows. They thought tearing away my family was a punishment. But as I stand here feeling the cool night air on my face, knowing my money is doing good in the world, knowing my sleep will be deep and undisturbed, I realize the truth. They didn't give me a punishment. They gave me the most valuable gift a man can receive in his final years. They gave me my freedom. Freedom from parasites. Freedom from lies. Freedom from the obligation to support people who despise me. I raised my glass to the empty sky. To the gardener I whispered with a smile. And tonight, this glass of wine tastes better than it ever has before. 2 years have passed since the day the gavel fell and sealed my family's fate. The silence in my life, which once felt heavy, has now become a symphony of peace. I thought my story was over. I thought I had closed the book on the Caldwell drama. But life, as it turns out, always has one more chapter to write, especially when it comes to the resilience of youth. Last week, I was sitting in a small diner in Brooklyn, not far from where the Scholarship Fund has its offices. I enjoy going there for the blueberry pancakes. It is a simple place. The kind of place where nobody knows I used to own half the skyline. I was reading the newspaper when a waitress approached my table to refill my coffee. "Here you go, sir," she said, her voice quiet and familiar. "Be careful, it is hot." I looked up to thank her, and the word died in my throat. Standing there in a blue uniform with an apron tied around her waist, and her hair pulled back in a practical bun, was Tiffany, my granddaughter. The last time I saw her, she was crying in a courtroom, following her mother out the door. She looked different now. The heavy makeup was gone. The designer jewelry was gone. She looked tired. Her hands were chapped from washing dishes, but her eyes were clear. "Tiffany," I whispered. She flinched slightly, but she did not run away. She held the coffee pot steady. "Hello, Grandpa," she said. "I heard you come here on Tuesdays. I asked for this shift." I looked at her. I looked for the spoiled brat who had screamed at me to get out of her party. I looked for the girl who had called me a gardener. I did not see her. I saw a young woman who was working for a living. Why, I asked. Why did you want to see me? Do you need money? She recoiled as if I had slapped her. She put the coffee pot down on the table. No, she said firmly. I do not want your money. I have 2 jobs. I am paying for my own apartment in Queens. It is small, and it smells like garlic, but it is mine. And I am paying for community college. I studied her face. There was a hardness there now, a grit that had not been there before. The fall from the Hamptons to Queens had forged her into something new. Then why are you here? I asked. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a small white envelope. She placed it on the table next to my pancakes. I came to give you this, she said. It is an invitation. I am graduating from my Associate S degree program next month. I made the Dean S list. She paused and looked down at her worn sneakers. Mom told me not to come, she said. She said you would just humiliate me again. She said you are a monster. But I remember that soup dinner, Grandpa. I remember you tried to save Dad. I remember you offered them a way out, and they spat on it. I was too young and too stupid to understand it then. But I understand it now. You were the only one telling the truth. I felt a lump form in my throat. It was a sensation I had not felt since the early days of this ordeal. I picked up the invitation. It was printed on cheap paper, but to me it looked more valuable than the gold-embossed invitations for her sweet 16. I would be honored to attend, I said. She smiled. It was a small, tentative smile, but it was real. Okay, she said. That would be nice. I have to get back to work. My manager is watching. She turned to go, but she stopped and looked back at me. And Grandpa, she said, pointing to the coffee cup. I didn't spill a drop this time. She walked away back to the kitchen. I watched her go. I took a sip of the coffee. It was hot and strong. The day of the graduation arrived under a slate-gray sky that threatened rain. The ceremony was held in a gymnasium that smelled of floor wax and old sweat. It was a far cry from the Ivy League halls Preston had attended, but the pride in the room was palpable. These were kids who had fought for every credit. I sat in the bleachers wearing my Savile Row suit, surrounded by parents in work uniforms and Sunday bests. When they called her name, Tiffany Caldwell, I clapped until my hands stung. She walked across the stage, her head held high, wearing a gown she had paid for herself. After the ceremony, I found her outside, holding her diploma like a shield. Congratulations, Tiffany, I said. Thank you, Grandpa, she said. You must have written a hell of an essay. She looked down at the paper in her hands, a smile touching her lips. I wrote the truth, she said. I wrote about grape juice. We laughed. It was a genuine shared moment of joy. Come on, I said, offering her my arm. I know a place that serves excellent pancakes, and I promise I won't make you pay. As we walked toward my car, I thought about Preston sitting in his cell. I thought about Monica walking to the bus stop, and I thought about Tiffany walking beside me toward a future she was building with her own hands. I had lost a son, but I had saved a granddaughter. I had burned down a false legacy to build a real one. The road had been hard. The lessons had been brutal. But as I opened the car door for the young woman who carried my name and my spirit, I knew one thing for certain. The house of Caldwell was standing strong again. Not on pillars of money, but on pillars of character. And that foundation would never crumble. I spent 40 years building a fortune, but it took losing my family to understand what true wealth really is. We often believe that love means giving our children everything, shielding them from every storm. But I learned the hard way that sometimes the greatest act of love is letting them face the storm alone. By cutting the financial cord, I didn't destroy my son. I gave him the only chance he ever had to find his own character. Respect is not an inheritance. It must be earned. Never set yourself on fire to keep ungrateful people warm, even if they share your blood. Peace is the only luxury that truly matters. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button to support the channel. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story about justice and resilience. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to cut off a toxic family member to save your own peace? I read every single comment. See you in the next video.